Welcome back to my channel for this week's Human Design Transit Report. And today is Monday, October 3rd. Oh my, it's October. Yes, it definitely is. And we are full on into fall here in the Northern Hemisphere. Let's go ahead and get started. So today, the sun has moved into the gate 48 and the earth has moved into the gate 21. Now, this is related to my incarnation cross, but they're flipped. So my sun is in the 21 and my earth is in the 48. But I know these two energies quite well, and I'm excited to get to share them with you. So the sun in the gate 48, the 48 in traditional human design is known as depth or the well. And I know when I first heard that, I was like, what does that mean? I don't quite really understand what that means. In quantum human design, which was created by Karen Curry Parker, it's been renamed as wisdom. This I understand much better. So this is a wonderful energy for research, for wanting to really get deep into something that you're interested in, for wanting to learn everything that there is about a topic or a subject. This energy has certainly supported me a huge amount in my life, whether I was in graduate school or whether I was a professor or whether I was learning all of the different kinds of personal growth and spiritual growth and healing practices and modalities that I've learned over the last 25 years. It's really been very, very supportive for me in that, because I can, when I get interested in something, and this is also related to my generator type, but I will go in and I'll dive in and I'll find out everything I want to know about it until I master it. And that's kind of been my pattern with things. And so the 48 is a wonderful support for you to be able to be diving into and learning more and more about anything that really interests you. It will support you in that endeavor. And not only that, it's not only about like gaining information, it's also about developing wisdom, which I really love, because the point of deep diving into different subjects and topics and things that you're interested in isn't just the acquisition of what we might call knowledge, right? Data, information, that kind of thing. It's also about how do we actually take that and utilize it in our lives so that it's useful for us and so that we become more wise about how we engage with our life. And the 48 can really help you with that. And it works with your life experience over time so that you can become wise about the different things that you are engaged in, right? Now, the challenge of the 48, it is on the spleen, and all of the gates on the spleen are known as fear gates because the spleen is the center for instinct and intuition, the immune system, and right timing. And so all of the spleen gates can be oriented more towards instinct, and instinct is designed to keep us alive, right? Instinct has two primary functions. It's to keep us alive, and then for us to procreate, and in that we are keeping our progeny alive, right? It's very basic that way. And so instinct can, particularly in today's world, find danger where there really isn't danger. I mean, it's not real and present. It might be activating some past trauma that we have that hasn't gotten fully healed yet, or it could be ancestral trauma that we're carrying in our epigenetics. I mean, that's also possible. But in general, a lot of times the instinctual fears that we have from the spleen, they're not real and present danger, okay? And so the fear of the 48 is the fear of not knowing enough. Which kind of makes sense, right? Because it is this drive to learn and to grow and to research and to, become really an aficionado in the things that you're drawn to. But then the fear is like, well, I don't know enough, that I'm not really an expert. I haven't really mastered this, right? I can keep going into the depth, right? So you want to just pay attention to that if that comes up for you while the sun is lighting up this energy, because you don't want to be undermine the fact that you actually are masterful at something, or really are expert or something, or the joie de vivre that you have about diving into something and really learning all about it, right? You don't want to have any of that anxiety or fear about knowing enough to disrupt the joy that you can have when you're learning everything that there is to learn about something that you care about. Now, the Earth has moved into the Gate 21, and the Gate 21 is known as the Treasurer. It was introduced to me as Control. And in quantum human design, it's been renamed as self-management. Now, my son lights up the Gate 21, so when I first saw that it was Control, I was like, I felt like I got dealt a really bad hand, But self-management makes a lot more sense to me, and even the Treasurer, because the 21 is about managing resources. Okay, that's what it's about. It's about managing resources. And of course, we can get really controlling about managing resources. People can be very controlling about their money. They can be really controlling about their attention or their time and so on. So I get where that control piece comes. And honestly, when I was younger, I had more control issues that I've created a new relationship with my inner control freak. So it's really not so much of an issue for me like it was when I was younger. But the term treasurer really sounds a lot just like money, right? It's very interesting that Karen has renamed this as self-management, which really has to do with looking at our own energy. I mean, of course it is looking at our money for sure, but it's looking at resources of all kinds. And I resonate personally with this much more because it has been a theme for me in my life to learn how to manage my energy, because I have a lot of energy. I have intense energy. I have some of the so-called gnarly gates in human design where I've really needed to learn how to get command over those energies so that I can harness them and direct them where I will, rather than having them kind of, push me around and manage me without my consent, which is something that I have experienced earlier in my life. So the 21 can really help us to be able to manage our own personal energy better, our own resources, our opportunities that come to us, and of course, our money as well. For me, one of the really big lessons of human design and one of the big opportunities of human design is discovering what our core energies are and learning how to move from either a disempowered state, which is where we really don't have access to the power of whatever the energy is, or the shadow state, which is where we're being kind of manipulative. And that's like the control. That's the shadow state of the 21, right? Because the shadow state is when we want to have control over things, manipulate things, could be people, could be an organization, could be a situation, right? In order for us to feel more safe, right? Which is again kind of an instinctual response to something. And so we want to move out of either the disempowered or the shadow into the more awakened aspect of this. And the 21 can be an ally for us when we are doing that with any of the energies in the human design chart, right? So the 21 can help us to do that. You'd be like, okay, I want to be managing. I really want to get in command of my own energy, not control, right? Because control is tightening in. Command is when you're coming from a place of sovereignty, a place of inner power, right? And you're able to harness and direct your energy where you will. So having said that, it's very interesting that Mars is lighting up the gate 45, which is on the throat center. And the 45 is known as the sovereign in traditional human design, or the king or queen gate. And in quantum human design, it's been renamed as distribution. But I want to talk about this for a minute because Mars in the 45 is really potent. Because Mars is known as the god of war, right? And he is. Mars is my ruling planet. As an Aries, I know about that energy. And so Mars can be a kind of impetuous, passionate warrior who gets into trouble, right? It starts trouble, gets into fights. So he definitely can be that way. And you can imagine if he's got the power of the sovereign, that can really not be a good combination. This is like dictatorship, okay? Like the shadow aspect of the 45 is dictatorship or authoritarianism, which we are seeing in our world today, are we not? In a variety of different places. And we've got a really big thing going on over there with Russia and Ukraine, right? But we also have a lot of authoritarianism emerging here in the United States. And so if Mars is lighting up that 45, it could give actual fortitude to authoritarianism. But but in its higher expression, Mars is the spiritual warrior. Mars is the one that helps us to know what's worth fighting for. He's the one who helps us, put a stake in the ground around our values and says, this is what's really important, right? And we're going to fight for that, but we're not going to be violent. It's much more nonviolence, right? It's much more of a Gandhi or Martin Luther King kind of an energy. The spiritual warrior only would take up arms in self-defense or in the defense of the youngers, right? Or the weakers, right? Which is part of what's happening, with the Ukrainians, right? In that sense, you might take up arms, but in general, you try whatever you can to do work non-violently. So this is the higher expression of Mars. So Mars has been there for a little over a week, and it's going to be there for about another 10 days or so. And in addition to this just being something important to take note of, because you want to see for yourself, do you feel like you want to take up arms? Do you feel like you want to start fighting? Does any of your authoritarian or dictator tendencies come alive during this time? Or are you going to utilize this energy for you to really take a stand for what you believe in? I think that's happening a lot in a variety of places here in the United States. It's happening around democracy a lot. We're seeing some very interesting things happening in Iran about people standing up for what they believe in. But because of that, we have a complete channel so that we've got the will center and the throat center defined through this channel, which in traditional human design is known as the money line. And I think it's called that because if you think of that 21 as being the treasurer, right? The one who is really managing their resources, and then the sovereign there who is like receiving those resources, right? This is a lot about energy in the form of money that is flowing through this channel. Now, in feudal times, right, we would have royalty that would just acquire resources and hold on to it. I mean, this is kind of tribal energy. It's like, yeah, let me just get the tithes from my people and I'm going to hold on to it and I'm going to live an ostentatious life, right? But now that we live in, a different time period, the world is very different. We want to be able to use this energy to manage our own personal resources and also to look at how are we sharing these resources, because truly a benevolent sovereign, a benevolent king and queen, which we've had on occasion, are about distributing resources, are making sure that the land and the people have what they need. And actually, the notion of sovereignty that is kind of pre-modernity, certainly pre-Roman, but even pre-modernity, was much more about taking care of the land and the people. And so that's what we can think of as this 2145 channel as being the energy to make sure that, the tribe has what it needs. We're going to be managing our resources, and we're going to be distributing them in a way that makes sense for the higher good of the land and the people. And so for you, that might be you and your family. It might be you and your community. It might be your tribe if you are involved in organizations or if you're involved in politics and you want to make sure that resources are going to the places that you believe in, right? That Mars is saying, hey, this is what we want to take a stand for. This energy can really support you. Now, this whole channel is only going to be here through Friday because we're going to have a change in the earth on Saturday, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So this week is a really good week for you to be looking at what are you doing with your resources? How are they being distributed? What are you kind of bringing in? And is it equitable? Is it sustainable? Is it in the highest good of the people in your life and in the highest good of the values that you carry and the things that you really care about? And so if you kind of step into your queen energy or your king energy in your benevolence, right, which means that you are really here for the highest good for all being and all of life, right? How would you want to distribute resources? It's something worth thinking about. So as we are evolving, right, the energy of this channel, that 2145, I just want to note that Jupiter is still in the gate 25, which is the gate of the love of spirit or spirit. And so we can really lean into those blessings of Jupiter to help us to imagine and regenerate and reorganize ourselves around this higher expression of what we do with resources and how we distribute it, and how, from a spiritual point of view, we're really coming from compassion, we're coming from empathy, we're coming from an understanding that everything is connected and we're all in this together. I also want to note that Mercury went direct yesterday. Woohoo! I've been hearing from all kinds of different people about all of the challenges, technological challenges that they've been having, communication challenges they've been having. So, we'll be a little bit in the shadow of it for a while, but hopefully this is going to help us with our communication, with our technology. Mars is still lighting up the gate 6, which is the gate of friction or impact. And so we want to be aware that how powerful and impactful and potentially a little abrasive our communication can be, as long as Mercury is in that. Then on Saturday, October 8th, the sun is going to move into the gate 57 and the earth is going to move into the gate 51. So let's talk about the 57 first. Now the 57, like the 48 that I was talking a minute ago, is on the spleen center, okay? And so it's one of the fear gates, and it's in traditional human design, it's known as intuition, and in quantum human design, it's known as instinct. Now this is very interesting because really in quantum human design, we're kind of highlighting the fact that this is on the splenic center, and we can be coming from a place of instinct with it. But it's really the lower expression, the instinctual expression of the 57. The highest expression of it, or the most awakened expression of it, is for it to be intuitive. It is in the knowing circuit, which is a highly intuitive circuit in the human design chart. And it is where you just know what you know. You don't know how you know it. You didn't learn anywhere. Nobody taught it to you. You didn't read it in a book. You just know what you know. So that 57 can be like that, provided that we don't go into the fear of the future, which is the fear of the 57, right? And it's interesting because for some people who are highly intuitive, they have this kind of ability to prophesy, if you will, or this ability to we could call it see the future. I would say see a possible future because, the future is not set. And so they can have the fear of the future if they're looking out into the future and seeing something that, they doesn't feel so good to them. But also if we're coming from an instinctual place, right, and we're really just trying to stay alive or keep our children alive, we can look out into the possible futures. And if we pick up on one that is not very beneficial, like we're not going to have enough to eat, we're not going to have enough money, we're not going to have the right work, whatever it is, this got very activated for people during the pandemic, right? So you want to really update yourself here if you notice that you got into a lot of the fear of the future during the pandemic, because it's old news at this point, right? So you want to get yourself really in present time and know that your power is in the present, right? It's not in the future. I mean, you can plan, but, I said to my kid even recently, I'm like, how to make God laugh, right? And make plans. I mean, we all plan to some degree, but we also have to hold our plans lightly because we are living in such an incredibly dynamic time when so many different things are changing so rapidly that we have to hold that future lightly, even as we are imagining and projecting our desired future into the quantum field, right? We want to do that, but we don't want to allow our imagination to be colonized by dystopias and stories of Armageddon and all of that, right? And that can happen when the sun is lighting up the 57. So you want to grab a hold of that aspect of yourself, and you want to make sure that you're tapping into true intuition and not running, fear pictures that either you've created or you picked up from the media or somebody else told you or whatever it is, right? You want to make sure you're not running fear pictures and you're not projecting them into your future because unfortunately, when you do that, you're more likely to live those fear pictures. So make sure that whatever you're projecting into the possible future is something that you really want to live. And the 51 is also on the will center, just like the 21 was. We've got an interesting parallel going on here. So the 51 in traditional human design is known as the gate of shock, and in traditional human design is known as initiation. It is half of the channel of the shaman or the priest or priestess, and you can see here that it is actually fully defined because Jupiter's still in that 25, which is the love of spirit or spirit, right? And so the 25 and the 51 are meeting. And it's a really powerful channel. It connects the two aspects of the heart chakra together, right? The will center and the G center. And so we've got a complete heart energy that is going to be happening during this transit. The thing about the 51 is that it can be a very disruptive and potentially shocking energy. Now, it's really either in its shadow aspect where you're using shock to manipulate or control, right? Or in the disempowered aspect where you're attracting shocking experiences. Now, I have this defined in my chart, the 51, and I recognize that I have attracted shocking situations earlier in my life. I really saw that a lot. And sometimes I could be shocking to other people. I wouldn't necessarily mean to. But this energy is very powerful. And so you need to grab a hold of it and harness it and make sure that you're directing it the way that you want it to, so that you just don't have things popping out of your mouth or doing things that are shocking to other people. Here's the thing. I've got a lot of individual circuitry. So some of the things I do are shocking to people, like my hair, right? It's shocking to some people, and that I don't care about. That's just their thing. But I'm talking about more like when you actually express the energy in a way that you're not really in alignment with, you weren't really in agreement with, but because that energy was more in charge, it actually just kind of came out and affected somebody. So you want to be able to get on top of it, and you want to be able to ground yourself in its higher aspect, which is initiation. And this really makes sense when we think about this as the priest, priestess, shaman, right? Is that the energy of initiation into higher consciousness so that we can connect with this love of spirit. And when the love of spirit is defined, these two are really talking to each other. And I think that really helps that 51 elevate, because we've got the spirit over here that is helping to elevate us into initiating into higher consciousness. Now, of course, the thing is sometimes we have a complicated or broken relationship with spirit. That can happen. And that's when the 51 can get more shocking. So my invitation to you is to really be cultivating, fostering, giving more fuel to your relationship to spirit, and to be grounding yourself in the possibility of initiating yourself first, but then others also into higher consciousness. And when you do that, that 57 is going to light up more with intuition than it will with that instinctual fear of the future. And then you'll be able to potentially project into the future the pictures and feelings and emotions of what it is that you actually want, rather than the things that you're afraid of. For those of you who have an open will center, which is 7 out of 8 of us, or an open G center, which I think is about 50% of us, you're going to feel this more strongly, because those two centers are going to get defined during this transit. And actually that was true with the will center with the one that started today as well, because that 4521 is defining that will center. And for those of you with open throats as well. So you take a look at how these configurations map onto your own chart and see how they're going to affect you. And check out what you're going to have access to that you might not when these transits aren't happening, and really make the most of them, because it's cool to have your will center defined during this time where you can. So this is going to be 2 different transits where it's going to be defined, and you can be really leaning into, your worthiness and your sense of value, your sense of your own value. I think that's one of the key pieces with the will center. Of course, you're going to have more willpower to be able to engage with things in certain ways than you wouldn't if it wasn't defined. But even more important is to really be imprinting yourself with a deep sense of your own value and your own worthiness during this time. And that will help you to feel it even more deeply when the transits have ended. Okay, so that is my transit report for this week. If you haven't had a chance already to download my copy of Get Started with Human Design and its companion volume of the Reflection Journal, which helps you to apply what you learn in the Getting Started with Human Design to your own chart, I encourage you to do so. It's totally free. I'd love to share this with people. My run request is that if you do that, you go ahead and you leave a comment, or you email me back and let me know what you got out of that ebook. And if you like this video, please give it a like and go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Okay, many blessings. Much love.